the French Revolution is going to get their own constitution in 1791, and they were going to have a kind of constitutional monarchy. The king is a hereditary head of the executive, having some sort of powers, the same sort of powers as the president. So that's interesting. I mean, Alexander Hamilton thought that we should have a kind of elected king, but that's weird, right? They're going to carry on with the hereditary king. They haven't killed King Louis and Marie Antoinette yet. So it's going to be in 2 years afterwards. But the preamble to this Constitution cuts out all the aristocracy, all the elite. It says, and I quote, "There is no longer any nobility, nor peerage, nor hereditary distinction, nor distinctions between orders, nor..." Now it's just, you're a person, everybody's a person. So it says there's no longer any nobility, nor peerage, nor hereditary distinction, nor distinctions between orders, nor feudal regime, nor hereditary justices, nor any order of knighthood. Now, Napoleon's going to come in. He's going to take power in 1799, so 9 years later, 8 years later. And then when he takes power, he's going to have a constitution that he dictates, that he says, okay, this is the constitution that you must accept. So actually, to St. Louverture's constitution was better, more democratic than Napoleon's constitution. And Napoleon's constitution also makes sure to reinstate the nobility. He calls them notables. So there's merchants and landowners and this and that, right? There's the crap peasants, and then there's Napoleon want to bring back some kind of, notable, some kind of nobility, an elitist government or elitist, those who govern. He wants to go before 1789, before the revolution. He wants to reinstate slavery. He very much is wearing the culottes, right? If he was there at the Bastille, he would be killing them. This had to be in the very beginning, in the early 1790s or so. But you have Jean-Francois. Jean-Francois is Papillon, okay? Jean-Francois Papillon, and then the other leaders was Bullet. 4 main leaders in the uprising of 1791. You had Dirty Duddy Bookman, and then you're going to have Jean-Francois Papillon. So Jean-Francois Papillon, you're going to have George Biassou, and then you're going to have Jeannot Boulet, okay? Jeannot Bullet. And Jeannot Bullet wanted to be known as the Grand Judge. So the Grand Judge, there's this interesting interaction here between Jean-Francois and Papillon and a Monsieur Boulet, a plantation owner that has the last name of Boulet. Monsieur Boulet will get that Boulet name. You have Jeannot Boulet, Bullet. Okay, so Mr. Bullet, Mr. Jeannot Bullet, Jeannot Bullet. The Grand Judge Jeannot Bullet was eventually going to be killed by the other 2 leaders, but he would have been the slave of Monsieur Boulet. And Monsieur Boulet was a very harsh master. I want to say he's the leader of the Continental Assembly. So the planters, the French royal planters, he's the one that heads the colonial assembly. He's the one that doesn't allow mulattoes to have rights. Free and mulattoes and free blacks weren't the same to him. So here's this incident, okay. At the appointed place and time, Jean-Francois appeared, leading his horse by the bridle. At the sight of him, Monsieur Boulet, a colonist, with the structure of white supremacy is violence, okay. You must have violence in order to maintain the established order. So you have this Monsieur Boulet, this colonist, this plantation owner, and they're working it out with the rebels. So Jean-Francois Papillon is coming to their meeting, and then when he comes to the meeting, he's just going to lash out at him. So Monsieur Boulet, colonist, was so overpowered with rage that he struck him with a riding whip. Jean-Francois, fiercely angry, fell back to his own band, and peace hung on a thread. At this dangerous moment, St. Leger had the quick-wittedness and courage to advance alone among the hostile blacks and speak to them kindly. So moved were they at this unexpected behavior that Jean-Francois threw himself at the feet of the men from France. He reiterated his promise. For the freedom of 400 of the leaders and forgetfulness of the past, he would lead the blacks back to slavery. The commissioners asked him as a guarantee of good faith to return a lot more plantations on Haiti than what I first suspected too. So they're saying by 1754, so this is like many years before the revolution, 30 years, or 40, there were 599 plantations of sugar. So there are 600 plantations of sugar, and then there's, what, 300 coffee plantations? But it says here there's 3,379 indigo plantations. That's 3,000 indigo, so that's, put them all together, that's over 4,000 plantations, over 4,000. There's 500,000 black people on Haiti, and this is an interesting number because they're going to squash the the slave rebellion in Guadeloupe, and they're going to do that with 7,000 troops. The French are. So the French get 7,000 troops. They go to Guadeloupe. They kill 10% of the island. So there was 100,000 people on it. 10% of the island is wiped out. It took 7,000 troops to subdue Guadeloupe. So one day late in July, a frigate, the Cockade, the Cocarde, and entered the harbor of Le Cap-Haitian having on board blacks deported from Guadeloupe. That night, some of them jumped overboard, swam ashore to give their brothers in San Domingo the news that slavery had been restored in Guadeloupe. So that's August 2nd, 1802 is when the letter here is written. So I would assume that it's around July 1802. So in July 1802, yeah, in late July. So this is when you have, what, May, Napoleon says, let's reinstitute slavery, and then by July, you got people, black slaves jumping off these Guadeloupe ships, jumping overboard for freedom, and they're telling them what had happened in Guadeloupe. So Leclerc's bullshit, he's being unearthed. They're finding out that he's a total liar. I don't know how they didn't suspect him to begin with. Let's go back to the numbers. Compare and contrast with the numbers. In Guadeloupe, you had 7,000 who subdued 100,000. They wiped out 10,000. So it's possible, Rich Pants, Riche Ponce, right? This man went with 7,000 troops, and he was able to put down the rebellion in Guadeloupe. So I think that's a good compare and contrast. What happened in Guadeloupe that didn't happen in Haiti? Leclerc wasn't able to get Haiti. So in the very beginning, Rich Pants just goes in to conquer without any questions. I don't think he's trying to trick any of the natives. He just declares war on them straight away. So perhaps that three-step deception that Napoleon wanted Leclerc to do was actually his undoing. Leclerc wasn't as an effectual officer. He wasn't as an effectual military leader when it came, compared to Rich Pants in Guadeloupe, because he had 40,000 troops. So you got 500,000 people. So, that's actually plenty of troops. And, compare and contrast, proportionally speaking, Leclerc had just as many troops that he needed in order to subdue the Haitian people. So his ineffectiveness, so he's a shitty military leader. Leclerc doesn't know, he looks like a smaller dwarf. He's a smaller troll than what Napoleon is. These are some really crappy bloodlines. Also, it's his brother-in-law, so he's come back to the colonies, right? So Josephine was instrumental in making sure slavery was maintained on the colonies. The slavery won't be declared illegal until 50 years later. So Rich Pants was successfully oppressive, right? He was a very good oppressor. Now, Leclerc wasn't a very good oppressor. He had 500,000 Haitian people to subdue. He had 40,000 troops. Proportionally speaking, he had more than the troops that he needed in order to subdue it. 7,000 could subdue 100,000, so that means 35,000 could subdue. You have in a situation in the end of 1802 where Leclerc is dying of yellow fever, he's losing militarily, and then the decree to reestablish slavery comes out on May. Now you got this ship that just came over here, in Haiti, the Cocarde. So the Cocarde tells the people right now, Jean-Jacques Dessalines knows, they should have known to begin with. But Leclerc basically puts the uprising and the rebellion and the excitement, put it into the rebellion because of the decree of General Rich Pants, because of the reestablishing slavery on Guadeloupe. So he's saying that all the blacks are persuaded because of this goddamn thing that he just did on Guadeloupe. You're fucking my position up. I didn't tell them that I was re-enslaving them. I've been lying. Letter by Leclerc to Napoleon. Who knows if he gets it in time. Death has wrought such frightful havoc among my troops that when I tried to disarm the North, which is where the 1791 rebellion started, a general insurrection broke out. So the moment that Leclerc goes in with his troops to take away his arms, I think that was step 3, right? Step 1, lie to them, try to be cozy, try to be their friend. Step 2, arrest them all. Step 3, take away their guns. So, yeah, absolutely, right? As soon as they take away their guns, they meant to establish slavery. So Alex Jones is right on this. Mao took the guns, Hitler took the guns, Stalin took the guns, and Leclerc tried to take the guns. But the Haitian people said, fuck that bullshit. He goes on with the letter, I fear nothing from Christophe, but I'm not so sure of Dessalines. So before he was sure of Dessalines, but Christophe was comfortably in Leclerc. The law arrived here which authorizes the slave trade in the colonies, which business letters from Nantes and Havre asking if blacks can be sold here. More than all that, General Rich Pants has just taken a decision to reestablish slavery in Guadeloupe. In this state of affairs, citizen consul, the moral force I had obtained here is destroyed. I can do nothing by persuasion. I can only depend on force, and I have no troops now, citizen consul. That your plans for the colonies are perfectly known. If you wish to preserve San Domingo, send a new army. Send above all money, and I assure you that if you abandon us to ourselves, as you have hitherto done, then this colony is lost, and once lost, you will never regain it. My letter will surprise you, citizen consul, after those I have written to you, but what general could calculate on a mortality of 4/5 of his army and the useless. The districts of Plaisance, Gros Morne, Port-au-Pas, St. Louis, Le Bourdonnais are in revolt, but I hope that this will be the last crisis. Leclerc he's about to die, and he's about to lose this war, and he's like, what the fuck, man? Christophe and Dessalines have begged me not to leave them here after my departure. That allows you to judge of the confidence they have in me. So he very much thinks that he's got Christophe and Dessalines in his pocket. At Tortuga, this is all in 1802, August 1802. At Tortuga, of 450 rebels, I had 60 hanged. Today, everything is in perfect order. Well, that's all you got to do, just hang 60 people, right? There's a lot of criticism with Lincoln. He hung 38 people all at once, so 38 Sioux Indians, and he should be criticized for that. But that's the only time he did that. 60 he talks about Jeremy is in revolt. He says, send me a successor. So he's begging, please, Napoleon, what the fuck are you doing? You left me here all alone, and now I can't kill enough. And he was talking about if I had not cut off so many heads here, I should have been chased from the island long ago and would not have been able to fulfill your plans. So he hates the way General Rich Pants, he comes in and just reestablishes slavery. He might be jealous of him, too, because it only took him a short while to, do the job that he had been taking all year to do. He also says that he gets the black generals to do his dirty work. The black generals lead the columns. They are well surrounded. I have ordered them to make terrible examples, and I use them always when I have something to do. So he's using the black people to kill the other black people, right? So that's perfect. Keeps his hands clean. He says the decrees of General Rich Pants have repercussions here are the source of great evil. P.S. I've just from Leclerc, General Leclerc. I've just heard of a bloody fight that General Boyer has experienced at Gros Morne. The rebels have been exterminated. 50 prisoners have been hung. These men die with an incredible fanaticism. They laugh at death. It is the same with the women. This frenzy is the result of the proclamations of Rich Pants and the fire-eating proposals of the colonists. So it would be very simple to arrest all of them the same day. It says, Napoleon, you told me to send the black generals to Europe. So he wanted all the black generals to be arrested and sent to Napoleon, right? He's like, well, hell, you got me to give me the rest of them. It seems like this is simple. He's like, well, I can't get rid of those generals. They're the ones that are quelling the rebellion, the insurrection. Every day there's a revolt. I get the black generals to send the black generals out there to smash them, to kill them. And again, 50 people were hung. 1802, 60 rebels were hung at Tortuga, the island right north of Haiti. And that's where Leclerc is going to die, too. He's going to die of yellow fever at the island of Tortuga, which was named by Christopher Columbus. He said it looked like a turtle. So Tortuga apparently is turtle in Spanish. So 60 were hung August 6, 1802. August 9th, 1802, 50 were hung. These are breaking, it's wartime, I guess, right? You're allowed to just decimate populations during wartime, apparently. But these are crimes are just, these crimes against humanity is just disgusting. Here he says, I've just discovered a great plot which aimed at raising the whole colony in revolt by the end of Thermidor. It was only partially executed for lack of a leader. It is not enough that I've taken away Toussaint. There's 2,000 leaders. So you're going to have some betrayal here, okay? So Auguste Charles Belair. Auguste Charles Belair was heartbroken since Toussaint had been arrested. Toussaint used to call him his Labinius, and he was one of his favorites. So the way that Dessalines looked at Auguste Charles Belair, he saw him as a rival. And so they're sitting there talking about that eventually Auguste Charles Belair is going to stand up and start leading the rebellion. And he wanted the whole population. It was like they were just waiting for a leader. The whole population of Ardebonite revolted with Auguste Charles Belair. Dessalines wasn't going to have it. He was like, shit, he's one of my biggest, rivals. So he said, hey, come to me. We're going to plan and plot against the French. So eventually Belair and Sanite come to Dessalines' meeting. Dessalines called for a meeting, but he's going to Auguste Charles Belair and Sanite trust in Dessalines' words, right? This is just like how Brunet arrested Toussaint Louverture. Sure, come here. We'll have a nice, friendly meeting. And as soon as they show up, they get arrested. So Belair and Sanite came, for the women were now fighting side by side with the men. Dessalines arrested them both and sent them to Leclerc. He arrested 2 of the rebels and sent them to the French commander. The French commander who's on his deathbed, who is so pissed and so sad, doesn't know what to do, is dependent upon Dessalines to smash down the population of black people, and Dessalines is all too happy to do it. So Dessalines and Toussaint were counter-revolutionaries during half the Haitian Revolution. That's why Auguste Charles Belair is a badass, and we need to learn all these people's, history characters, the ones Howard Zinn would like. Page 347. Christophe told General Ramel that if he thought slavery was to be restored, he would burn the whole of San Domingo to the ground. So while Henry Christophe was fighting for Leclerc, he basically didn't believe that slavery was still going to be restored. Christophe was still doubting that it was going to be restored. There's a general insurrection. There's another slave uprising of 1791. And instead of joining them, now they're against them. So a black general dining with LaCroix pointed to his 2 daughters and asked them, how could these 2 beautiful creatures go back to slavery? The thought of slavery being reestablished was just mind-blowing to a lot of these black generals, a lot of these kiss-asses, these French kiss-asses, these ones that are afflicted with Stockholm Syndrome, and they love their massa. They love their massa. Massa would never put us back into slavery. That's why we're going to kill Auguste Charles Belair. That's why they're going to kill Sanite, right? So Auguste Charles Belair and Sanite gets Dessalines' sword, gets Dessalines to kill them. But Dessalines, he didn't kill Leclerc. Leclerc, he died of fucking yellow fever. So how many times was he close to Leclerc? How many times could he have arrested Leclerc? Or was Leclerc well fortified and had plenty of soldiers all around him? And then you have the author, C.L.R. James. He says this, so you're liberal. It's like they couldn't believe it. So your liberal or social democrat hesitates and dithers until the sledgehammer of fascism falls on his head, or Franco launches his carefully prepared counter-revolution. Let's say it again. It was this, if they could not believe it, so your liberal or social democrat hesitates and dithers until the sledgehammer of fascism falls on his head, or a Franco launches his carefully prepared counter-revolution. It was Henry Christophe that he had at one time thought was comfortably in his pocket. Yeah, his pecker's in my pocket, to use an LBJ phrase. That's what Leclerc had said about Christophe, but Dessalines, he thought Dessalines was in his pocket too, but he started to doubt him at the end of 1802. So it says here, he mentioned that Dessalines, even though he never thought about insurrection, now he thinks about it today. So this is a September 26, 1802 letter. Then you go to Christophe. Now Christophe has this interesting scene where he's invited to dinner, but he wouldn't go to dinner with Leclerc unless he had his own soldiers. A white officer kept filling Christophe's glass with wine over and over again, and he got pissed off. He was like, you puny little white If I drunk the wine you poured out for me, I would have wanted to have drunk your blood and the blood of your general too. It's kind of a strange outburst, right? So that was a strange outburst. You know, perhaps he was afraid of being poisoned, but even if you're afraid of being poisoned, why would you yell, thank you for the wine, but if I drink the damn wine, I will drink your blood and drink the general's blood and drink everybody's blood. Leclerc accused Christophe of treason and called the officers of his guard. Useless to call them, said Christophe, mine are under arms, and with a single word, I can make you a prisoner. I remain subject to you as I was to Toussaint. Had he said, hurl this island into the sea, I would have done my best. That's the way I obey and command. He condemned Leclerc for his treachery to Toussaint, whose genius led us from slavery to liberty. His glory fills the world, and now Toussaint is in chains. He called Leclerc a parricide. Parricide. It's a crime, doubtless, that the consul wished to reward in giving you the government of San Domingo. That's what you were going to get the island by taking Toussaint. Now you got the island, Leclerc. And so they meet up with the colonists, and the colonists are still saying no slavery, no colony, right? We want slavery. We don't give a shit how many people die. It's the most important thing in the world. We've got to keep our goddamn slaves. Christophe was at the meeting. He protested against this policy, the injustice of it, its certain consequences, the destruction of the colony, its loss to France. The colonists were adamant. Only then did it seem that black and mulatto generals understood that there was no hope. As late as October 2nd, a military tribunal consisting entirely of colored men tried Charles Belair and his wife and had them shot. They both died bravely. His wife faced the fire. Months prior, there was an understanding between Pétion and Dessalines that they were going to rebel if it looked like, all was lost. But it was 3 months later. You have August Charles Belair and his wife had been killed for what? Rebelling against the French, fighting against the white masters, the white oppressors. They should fight against the white oppressors and the white masters. Oppression is a crime. In the rights of man, it said that, one of the basic human freedoms was resistance to oppression. Not just the right to pursue your own happiness, but, the right to resist oppression. So both Charles Belair and his wife died bravely. His wife faced the firing squad, refused to have her eyes bound, arrested by black leaders, condemned and shot by black leaders. There's another slap in the face of the black masses. Now, Leclerc is going to eventually respect black people by the time he dies, So Dessalines heard that Pétion and Clairvoy had started the insurrection. He left Gonabes and set out for Petit Riviere, giving the word to his supporters to be ready to raise the laborers at a given signal. The priest of Petit Riviere invited him to breakfast, and he went, not knowing that word had already come for his arrest and that he was to be taken at the presbytery. Madame Paisio, the cure's servant, a mulatto, laid the table and then brought Dessalines a bowl of water in which to wash his hands. Then, looking hard into Dessalines' eyes, she pressed her elbows to her side and then moved them backwards as a sign that he was about to be bound. He was about to be bound, tied up and bound. You got Dessalines, that's part of the movement. You got Pétion, who's part of the movement. You got Clairvoy, who's a part of the movement. So finally, right, October, 1 month before Leclerc dies of yellow fever, right? What is yellow fever? What are the symptoms? Is he like just diarrhea, right? Just shitting himself all the goddamn time? He doesn't have any damn troops. And then eventually he's going to... Christophe still hesitated for a day or two, but on October 14th, he joined Pétion and Clairvoy at last. The mulattoes in the south still struck to the French, but in the north and west, the masses now had trained soldiers and leaders. And on the night of November 2nd, Leclerc dies. He says, the condition of the colonies is not known in France. We've got a false idea of the Negro. If we have in Europe a false idea of the country in which we fight and the men whom we fight against. So the Haitian revolutionaries were fierce fighters. That's why he couldn't